Welcome to the Friends with Money podcast, brought to you by Money Magazine, creating financial freedom for Australians since 1999.
Hello and thanks for joining us for another episode of Friends with Money, Money Magazine's podcast to help you earn, save and achieve your financial goals. My name is Tom Watson, a senior journalist here at Money Magazine, and as always, it is a pleasure to be with you. Hopefully you are having a great start to 2025, dear listener, or still living it up on leave perhaps, and if you are, well, I am jealous. What else can I say? If you're anything like me though, the start of the new year acts as the perfect time to check in on your finances while you're feeling refreshed and motivated for the year ahead. Personally, I just had a look at our household budget and had to think about an investing goal I want to achieve this year. So feeling motivated, feeling on track, which is good. Admittedly, my approach has been a little bit haphazard though, as it is every year. So how can we be a bit more deliberate, a bit more targeted with any changes that we want to make to our finances this new year? Well, that's exactly what we are going to get into on today's episode. And spearheading our conversation today is none other than a friend of the pod and money expert at a financial comparison website, Mozo. It's Rachel Wastell. Rachel, Happy New Year and lovely to have you back on the podcast.
Happy New Year, Tom. Very excited to be here. I think everyone is in this mode in the beginning of the year of setting goals, and we need to include our finances in that. So
100%.
Excited to jump in.
And now is the time. Got to do it now.
Yes.
Rachel, I think it's fair to say that 4 words actually, are going to dictate our chat today and provide a bit of structure for anyone out there looking to tackle their finances this new year. And those words are review, consolidate, and plan ahead. So let's start with that first word, review. What should people be reviewing and how should they be doing it?
Yes, review. So I think the key thing when you're looking at your finances is not to be scared and to be honest with yourself. And that includes reviewing and knowing your numbers. And for many of us, looking at an interest rate may not be the most enticing thing, but that is often the key factor in determining how much interest you're earning or how much interest you're paying, and that impacts the total cost. So when you're looking at your finances and you want to get a good head start on the year, you need to know your interest rate. And particularly for loans and savings, other products like insurances, it's not as relevant. But when you're looking at key debts and savings, the interest rate is key. And converting that interest rate into dollar value is where you're going to get the most success. So we found that 42%, so Mozo did some research last year, and we found 42% of homeowners don't know the rate that they're paying on their home loan.
Wow.
Yes. And I think people think, I know how much I'm paying every month. That's fine. But if you don't know your rate, you can't compare it to others on the market, and you can't see if there's any opportunity for you to cut costs, and you can't see how much impact that has over the course of a loan. So I guess we'll bring some figures in here, not to scare everyone, but bring some figures in for a home loan to show the difference that less than 1% can make in dollar value.
Sounds good. Okay.
Yes. So on the Mozo database at the moment, we've got about a dozen lenders offering a rate of 5.99% or lower, which means that if you're paying over 6%, it's probably time to have a look at the market and look at your rate. Now, when you're looking across the whole database on Mozo, it's 6.73% is the average rate. That's on a 500K loan, 80% LVR over a 25-year loan term. So for a $500,000 loan at 5.99%, that monthly repayment is around $3,200. But for 6.73%, so less than 1% more, that dollar value is $3,448.
Wow.
So that's $230 a month difference in repayments for less than 1%. So I know that interest rate can be like a bit scary for people who aren't mathematically inclined, but it's really important to understand that the rate can really dictate how much your repayments. And when you're looking at a home loan, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars debt, that tiny difference in rates can actually equate to a lot over that loan term. And I think an interest rate, not only for home loans, personal loans, and credit cards, but when you're looking at savings, the interest rate is also very important.
Totally right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Similar story. You might think a percentage difference isn't going to make that much impact on the interest you're earning in your savings, but it really can. So let's look at the current rates on the database at Mozo at the moment. We have 3 accounts offering bonus rates of 5.50%, and the average bonus rate across the database is 4.66.
So still already a bit
less
of
than a
difference there.
percent.
Yeah.
Yes. But if you look at how these rates convert into dollars, that's where the reviewing is going to make the biggest difference. So you're looking at a 10K balance, the potential difference in interest is $88 a year. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but $88 a year is better than nothing. And also,
absolutely.
when you're looking at how much you have in savings, that's where the interest difference gets quite exciting, I guess, because if you have 50K in your savings, that 1 year with that, small difference from 4.66 to 5.50, that's $440.
Wow.
Of additional interest that you could earn by switching to that higher rate. Now, I think what's important for both home loans and savings, however, is to say that there's no kind of perfect solution for everyone, and everything will depend on what your personal financial situation is. For home loans, if you want one of those lower rates, typically you may, especially for someone who hasn't paid off as much of their loan, to get those lower rates, you might need to sacrifice the bells and whistles of, extra repayments or redraws or offset accounts. And for savings, if you want those high rates, you're going to have to make sure you meet a bunch of conditions usually to get those. So it's not like you can just find the best rate and it's going to apply to everyone. But the difference, knowing your rate, knowing what that equates to in dollars, and being aware of what you're paying and knowing your numbers, that's the key to reviewing your finances, I believe, in 2025. And I just think that sometimes we stick our head in the sand thinking, I'll just keep going and I'll be fine. But it's only by looking at what you're paying or what you're earning and comparing that to other things on the market. And look, you don't have to be a mathematical genius. Mozo has a number of calculators, savings calculators, home loan calculators that do the math for you. But it's really about just being honest with yourself.
And taking the time and the effort to review, right? Like as you were talking there, Rachel, I was kind of doing the comparison in my head with the home loan rate at the moment. I was like, oh, okay. I thought I was on a pretty good rate, but maybe there is a little bit of room to save and to save more and considerably more by the sounds of it. So just having that kind of knowledge and that kind of comparison in your head, I think is really helpful. So we got reviewing under our belt then. So the next word on our list was consolidate. What do we mean by consolidate, Rachel?
Yeah, so consolidate is all about simplification, trying to simplify your finances. And I love this one because I recently, over the past couple of years, been very honest with myself and consolidated a lot of things that I had previously, I think, been holding me back. So there's one thing about, making ends meet and jumping week to week with your money and your finances. It's another to move ahead. And I think you can kind of always float around. But if you want to kind of look at where you are and get ahead, especially as everything is so expensive these days and the cost of living continues to rise, we really want to make sure that we are looking at everything in one place. So I think for debts, if we start with debts and loans, if you have multiple debts, if you have a few credit cards, for example, and you're paying that double-digit interest on the purchases, the balances that you can't clear, consolidating those credit cards using a balance transfer, for example, can give you a little bit of time to pay off all of those different balances in one place. And instead of paying the interest on the balances on each of those separate credit cards, you consolidate that and you pay a balance transfer fee to one lender, and then you have a 0% term. So to explain it simply using a few cards, we've got 8 balance transfer credit cards on our database at the moment that offer a 1% balance transfer fee. with terms, 0% terms ranging from 6 months to 2 years,
Right.
which means that you collect all of those balances, you pay that 1% fee, and then you have, 6 to 24 months, depending on the card, to pay off all of those balances without interest. Obviously, please cut up the card if you're a bit of a frivolous spender, because once you add purchases in, that does complicate it. But to simplify it, there is one card, Virgin Money is actually, Anytime Rewards card has a 24-month term with a 1% fee. So if you did need to pay off a number of credit cards, consolidating them into one balance transfer means that you have one place where all your credit card debt is, and you can make sure you're on top of that. With a few Black personal loans, there are some debt consolidation loans that you can get. We've got one from Harmony at 5.76%. That can help you kind of consolidate if you have multiple personal loans as well. So for debts, I think when it comes to consolidating, it's more about just getting a clearer view of where your debt is, and also making sure you save on fees, because you don't want to be paying fees and interest to multiple lenders. It's easier to kind of look at one debt, and then you can manage that, clear that, and hopefully move ahead a little bit smarter. But it also works for accounts. So consolidating debt's brilliant. You've done that. If you're looking at your accounts, if you're not really sure what you're spending and you're finding it hard to budget, or you're not really sure where your money's going, it might be that you have multiple accounts with multiple providers.
I'm
I've seen
laughing
people
because
paying for
I'm
coffee.
doing that.
I've seen people paying for coffee with their Apple Wallet and scrolling through multiple cards. And I know that it can feel, I'm not sure what to choose, but consolidating transaction accounts can actually give you a much better idea, because these apps, like Westpac's banking app's great. Up has a really good banking app. There's a lot of providers that have banking apps that do the maths for you and the calculation for you. And Up even hides what you are supposed to be paying for bills, so you can only see what you have left. So I think consolidating transaction accounts, if you have multiple, that's great. And savings, of course, savings is a great one to consolidate, as long as you keep your savings in one account under one ADI license under 250K. The reason for this is, as we've discussed before, Tom, the government guarantee. We spoke about that in a recent
That's a great
podcast.
Point.
Yes. But you could just look up government guarantee to get all the details on that. But with savings, you can actually sometimes get a higher rate if you have more. So Australian Unity is offering 6% for people who have 50K, between 50 and 250K in their savings account. So if you do want to consolidate your savings, that can get you a higher rate in the end.
It's so interesting because, as I was saying, I'm the type of person that has multiple different bank accounts and savings accounts and banking products from various different banks. That's me. That's how it kind of works for me. It is complicated though, and it takes a bit of tracking. So I can see the appeal for many people just to simplify things by consolidating, and the benefit that brings, not just from the kind of debt consolidation angle and paying less and helping, yourself pay off debt with less interest, but just making life and life admin simpler and being able to see all your money in one place. That makes complete sense to me.
Of course. And that's a great point, because as I always try and stress, we can provide, guidance to what might work, but every single person is different. So you need to find what works for you, and perhaps just consolidating all of your information about your multiple accounts into one place will help you track them better. But yeah, I think it's really down to what works for you.
So a short recap, we've reviewed things like home loan rates and savings rates, and we've consolidated things like credit card debt and personal loan debt, and even our bank accounts and savings accounts into the one place. Now we are on to our final step, which is planning ahead. So Rachel, how might people want to go about planning ahead, and what sort of things might they want to consider planning?
Well, for me, personally, I have recently have a newfound love for superannuation. I think that this is the key to planning ahead, and something that often a lot of people who aren't close to retirement age ignore as, I guess, something that they can think about later. But superannuation is incredible in the way that you can benefit from doing more earlier because of compound growth. So super really is kind of the ticket to making sure that you're okay later in life. And there's a shocking stat. We found out last year, we did a super report at Mozo. We found out that 58% rarely or never compare their super fund performance.
Wow, really?
Yes. So a lot of people aren't looking to see whether their retirement fund is doing what they need it to do for them. And this kind of lack of awareness or kind of she'll be right, oh, it's a future Rachel problem mindset is something that I think we need to change. And planning ahead by looking at super is key. And, just talking about consolidation, one of the first things you can do is make sure your super's consolidated. So if you have had multiple jobs, make sure that all of your super is in the one place so that you can benefit from the compound interest and compound growth of that. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of money split working in separate places for you. In the report we did last year at Mozo with the super funds, we looked at the performance. We found out that for choice options, so that means like if you go in and choose the options, so balanced, conservative, growth, high growth, over 5 years, by switching from a lower performing to a top performing fund, you could add anywhere between $9,000 and $16,000 to a 100K balance. And that's just over 5 years. Yeah. And then when you look at the My Super, which is if you just go in and you don't click anything, it's the default option. Kind of just set up your super and you don't choose the kind of areas that you want your super invested. That could still, even switching from a low performing to a higher performing My Super, you could actually add 6K to that 100K balance over that 5 years. And that doesn't account for any ongoing deposits. That's if it just sat there for 5 years. So super is something that I believe we should be checking more, not just performance, but also fees. And the consolidation of the super, that can help you not only, benefit from having all of your super in that one place, but it can also help with fees. You're not paying fees to multiple super funds. You're paying fees to the one super fund. So yeah, I think it's, in terms of planning ahead, it might seem like a way away, but time goes quickly. And I feel like the older I get, the quicker time goes. And you never know how much, unless it's good. Actually, it's kind of going back to that first review. Look at, even with super, check the rate of performance. It's all about knowing your numbers and then knowing what does that equate to in dollar values so that you can visually see, or you can kind of build a connection with, oh, that's not just a percentage or a decimal point. That is dollar value that I'm losing out on.
It's always the big thing to look at, isn't it? And as you've kind of highlighted here, Rachel, throughout the chat, between your mortgage and between your super fund, you could potentially be saving or adding thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars with a little bit of action. So definitely underlines why it's important to review and consolidate and plan ahead, and why the new year's a good time to do it, I think.
Yes. And I think if there's anything that people take from this, it's just look, please. Even if you don't follow the three steps, just take a look so that you're being honest with yourself about where are you financially, because the worst thing that you can do is ignore it, because it's not going to go away. Absolutely.
Set aside a Saturday or Sunday morning, get yourself a cup of coffee and spend an hour or two just taking the time to have a look at things. That's what works for me. So, maybe it works for other people as well. Rachel, I feel like we've got through an absolute ton already today, but we are running out of time. So thank you so much for joining us and for helping provide us with some excellent advice and tips to start the new year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
That's it for this episode of the Friends of Money podcast. Don't forget to jump on our website, moneymag.com.au, for your daily dose of financial news, or you can go grab yourself a copy of the latest edition of Money Magazine in all good newsagents. As always, Friends of Money will be right back in your podcast feeds next week. So until then, my name is Tom Watson. Goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Friends with Money podcast. For credible, independent, and easy to understand financial commentary, visit moneymag.com.au. Please remember that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are general in nature, and further independent advice and research based on your personal circumstances should be sought before making an investment decision.